故事从简单开始，逐步提升，持续下来，你会惊讶自己在不知不觉中理解更复杂的英文文章。故事开始。
The ocean was calm, but it felt heavy, as if it were holding many secrets. The research ship Keldysh moved slowly across the dark blue water above the surface. The wind was cold. Below the surface, the past was waiting. On the deck stood Brock Lovett, the leader of the exploration team. He had spent most of his life searching for lost things under the sea. Gold ships, warships, old cities, but none of them felt as important as this one. This is the Titanic, Brock said quietly. Not just a ship, a legend. Behind him, his team prepared the equipment. Cables were checked again and again. Screens were cleaned. Coffee cups sat beside keyboards. Forgotten, they were ready to send the robot down into the deep. Inside the control room, the lights were dim. Everyone stared at the screens. ROV is ready, said a technician. Descending now, the robot slowly went down into the ocean. At first, sunlight followed it. Then the light faded. The water grew darker and darker. At 2,000 meters, everything was black. Only the robot's lights remained. Small sea creatures floated past the camera. Some moved quickly. Some did not move at all. It's like another world, someone whispered. Then, something large appeared on the screen. A shape, a wall. No, a ship. There she is, Brock said. The Titanic. No one spoke. The ship was broken in two. Rust covered her body like red snow. Long metal pieces hung down like old bones. She looked tired. She looked sad. She's been down there for more than 100 years, Brock said. And she still remembers everything. The safe. The robot moved slowly through the wreck. It passed empty rooms and broken furniture. Shoes lay on the ocean floor. A plate rested against a wall. Everything was quiet. Then the camera found something unusual. A safe, said the technician. It's still closed. Brock leaned closer to the screen. That's it, he said. That's where the diamond could be. The robot carefully grabbed the safe. Metal touched metal. Everyone held their breath. Slowly, the safe was lifted away from the Titanic. Hours later, it reached the ship. The team gathered around as Brock opened it. Inside were papers, old letters, and drawings. No diamond. Where is it? Someone asked. Brock did not answer. He picked up one drawing. It showed a young woman lying on a couch. She wore nothing but a long necklace. At the center was a large blue diamond. The heart of the ocean, Brock said softly. The room became silent. A face from the past. She wore it, Brock said. This woman wore the diamond. He looked closely at the face in the drawing. She was young, he said, beautiful, confident, and real, said his assistant. Yes, Brock nodded, and she's the key. That night, Brock made a decision. He showed the drawing on television. If this woman is alive, Brock said to the camera, we need to hear her story. Rose watches. Far away, near the edge of the sea, an old woman sat in a quiet room. Her name was Rose Dawson Calvert. The television was on, but the sound was low. She was not really watching. Then she saw the drawing. Her heart stopped. The room seemed to disappear. "That's me," she whispered. Her hands shook. Her eyes filled with tears. She did not understand. Her granddaughter, Lizzie, looked up. "Grandma, are you okay?" Rose touched the screen gently. "I remember this," she said. I remember everything, returning to the sea. Days later, Rose stood on the deck of the Keldysh. The wind moved her white hair. The ocean smelled the same. Brock watched her carefully. "You're the woman in the drawing," he said. "You were there." "Yes," Rose answered. "I was on the Titanic." They sat together in a quiet room. Brock asked the question he had waited years to ask. "Did you have the heart of the ocean?" Rose looked at the drawing for a long time. "Yes," she said, "but the diamond is not where you think it is." "Where is it?" Brock asked. Rose smiled gently. "That story began in 1912, she said. "When I was 17. She closed her eyes, and the past opened its doors. The sound of engines faded. Rose saw sunlight. She stood at the dock, looking up at a giant ship, the Titanic. People laughed. Music played. She remembered feeling trapped. "I was rich," Rose said softly, "but I was not free." She opened her eyes. "That," she said, "is where my life truly began." The Titanic woke before the sun. Steam rose from her black body as ropes were pulled free and voices echoed across the dock. The ship did not move yet, but she felt alive, like a giant holding its breath. People crowded the pier, some dressed in dark coats and shining shoes, others in worn jackets that smelled of salt and old smoke. All of them looked up at the same ship, but they did not see the same future. In first class, the air was calm and soft. Rose DeWitt Bukater stood near the railing with her mother, and their trunks were already carried away by uniformed men. Rose wore a pale blue dress and a hat tied too tight under her chin. She smiled when she was expected to smile, but her eyes stayed distant, as if she were watching the ship from far away. "Stand straight, Rose," her mother whispered. "People are watching." Rose did as told. People were always watching. In this world of silk and gold, every step mattered. Every word could be weighed like money. Rose had learned this early, after her father died and left them with a fine name but empty pockets. This voyage was meant to fix that. A rich marriage waited on the other side of the ocean, and the Titanic was the bridge. Below her feet, deep in the ship's body, another world was waking. Jack Dawson leaned against a wall in third class, laughing as the ship's horn shook the air. He held a small bag and a sketchbook tied with string. That was all he owned, and it was enough. Around him, families spoke in many languages. Children ran between legs. The smell of soup and coal filled the narrow halls. "She's really going," said Fabrizio, Jack's friend, eyes wide. Jack grinned. "Told you we'd make it." They had won their tickets in a card game the night before. Luck had been kind or foolish. Jack did not care which. To him, the ship was not a promise of safety or power. It was motion. It was escape. As the Titanic pulled away from the dock, cheers rose from every level. In first class, white-gloved hands waved. In third class, hats were thrown into the air. The same sound, the same ship, but the walls between them were thick. Built from rules and fear, Jack wandered the decks later that day, following music and light, until a uniformed officer stopped him. "Third class is below," the man said. "Firm, but not cruel." Jack nodded and turned away. But he remembered the path. He always did. Rose stood alone that afternoon, watching the sea stretch out in all directions. The land was already gone. The ship felt like a floating city with no exit. Her breath grew tight. She climbed higher, past signs and doors, until she reached the open air near the bow. The wind pulled at her dress. The ocean rushed below, dark and endless. For a moment, the noise of the ship faded. Rose imagined what it would feel like to let go of everything to fall, to be free, even for 1 second. "Miss?" The voice cut through her thoughts. She turned, startled. Jack stood a few steps away, hands raised as if to show he meant no harm. His hair was wild from the wind. His coat was thin. His eyes, however, were steady. "This area's not safe," he said. "You could slip." Rose frowned. "I'm aware of that." Jack shrugged. "Just thought I'd say something." They stood in silence. The wind howled between them. Rose noticed the rough lines on his hands, the way he stood without fear of being seen. "You are not from first class," she said. Jack smiled. "That obvious?" "Jack, yes. Then I guess you're not from where I'm from either." A strange feeling passed between them, like a door opening just a crack. Two worlds touching. "I'm Rose," she said, surprising herself. "Jack." Footsteps sounded behind them. Voices called Rose's name. She stepped back, the spell breaking. Jack watched as she was pulled away, her blue dress fading into the white and gold of the upper deck. That night, the Titanic cut through the dark sea, lights glowing like stars fallen onto water. Above, laughter and music filled grand rooms. Below, songs rose from crowded halls, and somewhere between those levels, unseen and unnoticed, fate began to shift quietly, patiently waiting for the moment when the walls between worlds would no longer hold. The sea was calm, but the ship carried storms inside it. Rose Hale felt it each morning when she woke. Her cabin was wide and soft, filled with pale light and quiet sounds, yet her chest felt tight. She dressed in fine clothes and smiled at the right times, but her thoughts kept drifting downward past the clean halls and locked doors to the places where Jack lived. Jack Miller woke with laughter around him and the smell of bread and coal. His bunk was narrow, his coat thin, but his heart felt light. He had not planned on falling for anyone, least of all a woman from the world above. Yet every time he saw Rose, something steady grew inside him, like a promise he did not fully understand. They met in stolen moments. Sometimes it was on a side deck, where ropes and crates hid them from view. Other times it was near the stairwell, where their voices stayed low and quick. Jack spoke of roads without names and skies that changed color every hour. Rose spoke less, but when she did, her words came slowly, as if they had been waiting a long time to be heard. "You're not what they think you are," Jack told her once. Rose looked at him. "Neither are you." That truth scared her more than she expected. Carl Bennett noticed the change before anyone else. Carl was a man who liked order. His hair was always neat. His plans were always clear. He had chosen Rose because her name opened doors, and her silence made life easy. Lately, that silence was gone. "You've been distant," he said one evening at dinner. His voice was smooth, but his eyes were sharp. "I'm tired," Rose replied. Carl leaned closer. "You belong with me. Do not forget that." Rose's hand tightened around her fork. She did not look at him. Later that night, Rose could not sleep. The ship hummed softly beneath her, like a great breathing thing. She wrapped a coat around herself and walked out into the cold air. Jack was already there, leaning against the rail, staring into the dark. "You came," he said, smiling. "I had to," she answered. He led her forward to the very front of the ship. The wind rushed past them, loud and clean. The ocean opened wide, endless and alive. "Trust me," Jack said. She stepped closer. He placed her hands on the railing and stood behind her, careful, steady. Rose closed her eyes. For a moment, fear rose in her chest. Then the wind lifted her breath, and the fear melted away. "Open them," Jack whispered. She did. The ship cut through the sea like a bright dream. Stars filled the sky, and the water caught their light. There were no walls, no names, no plans. "I'm flying," Rose said, her voice full of wonder. Jack laughed, soft and free. In that moment, he loved her without question. But love does not hide for long. Carl saw them later, shadows against the stars. His face hardened. The next morning, he waited for Rose in the hall. "You shame me," he said quietly. "That boy is nothing." "No, he makes me feel alive," Rose replied, her voice shaking but strong. Carl's smile vanished. "This ends now." The ship sailed on, bright and proud, unaware of the choices forming in its heart. And beneath the calm surface, something dangerous had begun to move slowly, surely, toward them all. The night was clear and cold, too quiet for a ship so large. The sea lay flat as glass, and the stars hung low, sharp and bright. Most of the passengers slept, wrapped in warm blankets and soft dreams. The Titanic moved forward with calm pride, her engines steady, her lights glowing like a floating city. Jack Miller was awake. He leaned against a wall on the lower deck, sketching by weak light. He liked the night best. It asked nothing and promised nothing. His pencil paused when he felt it a sudden shiver. Light but wrong, like the ship had brushed against a giant hand. A sound followed. Not loud, not sharp, just a long scrape that ran through the bones of the ship. Jack looked up. Above, Rose Hale sat straight up in bed. Her heart raced before her mind caught up. The ship slowed, just a little, but enough to wake fear. What was that? She whispered. Her mother stirred. Probably nothing. Go back to sleep. But Rose could not. Minutes passed. Then voices echoed in the halls. Doors opened. Feet moved fast. In the crew quarters, men ran with tight faces. Orders were spoken low but fast. Somewhere deep below, water pushed into metal rooms not meant to hold it. The Titanic had struck ice. At first class stayed calm. Stewards spoke with gentle smiles. Please put on your life vests. This is only a small delay. Rose followed the flow of people to the deck. Cold air hit her skin. She scanned the crowd, her eyes searching without thought. Jack pushed upward through narrow halls. Water crept along the floor, cold and dark. People shouted now. Children cried. A door slammed shut behind him, locked from above. "Hey!" Jack yelled. No answer. He forced another path. Heart pounding, on the upper decks, boats were uncovered. Officers called out orders. Women and children were guided forward. Men in fine coats stood back, silent and pale. Rose stood near a lifeboat, her hands shaking. She felt small in the open air, surrounded by fear she had never learned how to face. Rose, she turned. Jack broke through the crowd, breathless, eyes wild with relief. "You're here," she said, tears rising. "Of course," he answered. "I wasn't leaving without you." An officer stepped between them. Only women and children. Jack stepped back, jaw tight. Rose hesitated, torn. "Go," Jack said softly. "I'll find another way." Rose shook her head. "I won't." Carl Bennett appeared, calm as stone. "Rose, get in the boat. Now." She looked at him, then at Jack. The world seemed split in two, one side clean and safe, the other dark and honest. Around them, panic grew. Below decks, gates held fast. Third-class families pressed against iron bars, shouting for help. Some guards looked away. Others held their ground. A woman screamed as a boat lowered half empty into the Black Sea. Jack saw it all. The fear, the cruelty, the courage. Two men giving coats to strangers, hands reaching through smoke and steam. The ship tilted, slow but sure. Rose made a choice. She stepped back from the lifeboat. The night swallowed the sound of the boat hitting water. Above them, the stars still shone, cold and silent, as the Titanic began to sink, and the true test of every soul on board was only just beginning. The ocean did not rush in all at once. It crept, patient and cold, taking the ship piece by piece. Water rolled across the deck like dark glass. The tilt grew stronger, forcing people to cling to rails and each other. The air was filled with cries, prayers, and the sharp whistle of steam escaping broken pipes. The Titanic was no longer a promise. She was a question with no good answers. Jack Dawson held Rose Harper's hand as they moved through the crowd. His fingers were numb, but he did not loosen his grip. He had learned long ago how to read danger, and this night spoke clearly. There would not be enough space, not enough time, not enough mercy. Look at me, he said when Rose stumbled. Keep breathing, one step at a time. She nodded, though her legs shook. Her fine dress was heavy with water. Cold climbed her skin like a living thing. She had never known fear like this. Fear that did not shout, but pressed quietly, deeply, into the chest. They reached the open deck near the stern. The ship rose behind them, black against the stars. Lifeboats were gone. Only broken wood and falling snow like ice filled the air. A sailor shouted, "Jump if you must." Rose turned to Jack, panic breaking through. "We can't survive that." Jack looked at the water, then back at her. He smiled, not wide, not brave, but true. "We don't jump yet," he said. "We think." They found a broken door floating near the edge, half in the water. Jack tested it, pushing down. It sank, then rose again. "It'll hold one," he said. Rose understood before he finished. No. Jack met her eyes. In them, he saw fear, but also strength. The same strength that had pulled her out of a life already decided. "You're lighter," he said gently, "and you fight harder to stay." "I don't want to stay without you," she said, her voice breaking. Jack placed his hands on her shoulders. "Rose, listen to me. You changed my life. That means it mattered. All of it." The ship gave a final groan, deep and long. Metal screamed. The deck lurched. Jack pushed the door into place and lifted Rose onto it before she could stop him. She screamed his name, grabbing for his coat, but the cold stole her strength. He held her steady until she lay flat, shaking, but alive. "I'll be right here," he said, stepping into the water. The shock hit him like knives. His breath left him in a sharp cry. Rose leaned over the edge. "Jack, please get on." He shook his head, teeth already chattering. "If I do, we both sink." The ship broke apart behind them with a sound like thunder. The lights went out. The night swallowed everything. They floated in silence broken only by distant cries. Ice drifted past like ghosts. Jack held onto the edge of the door, his arms hooked over it. His face was pale now, his eyes tired. "You have to remember," he said slowly. "No matter what happens, you keep going." "I will," Rose whispered. "I swear." His grip loosened as the cold claimed him inch by inch. His breathing slowed. His eyes closed. "Jack?" she said. He did not answer. Morning came softly. Rescue boats moved through the still water, calling out. A hand reached for Rose. She was lifted, wrapped, saved. Years later, an old woman stood at the edge of another ship, the sun warm on her face. Her hair was white now, her hands steady. She held a simple drawing, one last line from a boy who taught her how to live. Rose opened her fingers. The paper slipped into the sea and disappeared. She smiled, turned, and walked forward, carrying love, loss, and a life fully lived. The end.
如果你喜欢今天的故事，别忘了按下赞，让我知道你喜欢这样的英文故事哦。想看更多简单又好懂的英文故事吗？快去看看我的其他影片。 跟着故事慢慢变厉害。今天你学到哪个单字或句子最喜欢呢？或者你想看我下一集讲哪个故事，都可以在留言区打卡告诉我，我会看每一则留言哦。别忘了每天来打卡学英文，慢慢你会变得更厉害。